Something crazy happened at the exact same moment an entire country was celebrating the severity single most important championship in global football. Something that the television cameras caught, something that FIFA already has in a massive file, and something that the mainstream media is completely hiding from you. The very player who lifted that trophy, the veteran midfielder who was the engine of his national team for years, the one who, during that peak moment of global glory, became the central figure in a chaotic sequence of blows right in front of half the planet. That specific athlete, that key midfielder, who really should be sitting right on top of the world today has his name stamped on one of the largest and most complex disciplinary files that FIFA has ever opened against a single national squad in the modern history of the World Cup. Are you aware of how many separate charges he is facing all by himself? What does this really mean for his future career and his club? Do you know what might happen next to the most decorated national team from the recent tournament? Is there even any kind of precedent for this? Do you know what comes next and why this situation could change everything? Stick around, because we are going to unpack every single detail of this mystery. Hit that subscribe button if you have not already. Let us get into it. Something happened at the exact moment a whole country was celebrating the most prestigious trophy in sports. This was not just a small push or a minor scuffle that simply fades away in the intense heat of the post-match celebration. It was a violent chain reaction of hits, unfolding frame by frame, right in front of the television cameras of half the world. And just 1 week later, FIFA already has concrete names, they have official charges, they are now holding a massive, detailed file that is quickly becoming one of the most substantial disciplinary cases the organization has ever launched against a single team in recent World Cup history. Three key players from the highly decorated squad that dominated the tournament, all three are now formally accused of committing physical assault. And one of those players, the veteran midfielder Leandro Paredes, is facing not just one, but three completely separate charges that could easily ban him for at least 9 matches under the strict FIFA disciplinary code. Yes, 9. But there is a fourth person involved. And this is precisely where the situation stops being a simple locker room spat and turns into an incident with absolutely no precedent in the sport. Because that fourth suspect is not actually a player, he is the assistant coach of the Argentinian squad, a prominent figure right there on the technical bench, the person who gives instructions, the one who is supposed to keep his head cool and maintain control when emotions boil over. He is accused of throwing a direct punch at an opponent right on the pitch during a World Cup final, while global television cameras watched his every move from multiple angles. Can you picture what actually sparked this massive post-match brawl? At the final whistle, how many players actually ended up clashing between both technical benches? Think about what the official referee report actually says, and what the independent prosecutor appointed by FIFA added to this explosive disciplinary file. Do you know the specific punishments each individual faces, and which of those consequences are pretty much unavoidable at this point? Why is this specific file so completely different from any other emotional post-match clash we have ever seen in football? Stick around because we are going to answer all of these pressing questions right now. Subscribe if you have not yet. Let us keep going. To truly comprehend how big this situation is, we have to travel back to the exact second when everything went sideways. The very moment the referee blew the final whistle to crown Spain as the champions, the Spanish bench rushed onto the pitch in pure joy. And it was right then, at that exact split second, that everything completely fell apart. Several of the Argentinian players, instead of accepting their painful defeat with the quiet dignity a World Cup final demands, initiated a direct, angry confrontation that quickly spun out of control. Active players, substitutes on the bench, even entire coaching staffs. According to reports that surfaced later, even stadium security officers had to rush onto the green grass just to pull the fighting players apart. That shocking scene was permanently burned into the minds of millions of fans watching at home, forcing FIFA to immediately trigger a heavy-handed disciplinary process they almost never use with this kind of speed and authority. What actually makes this investigation completely different from past on-field incidents is not the physical brawl itself, but what happened behind closed doors in the days that followed. Because FIFA did not just issue a weak administrative warning or hand down a minor fine that everyone would forget within 3 days. They launched a formal, deep investigation led by an independent prosecutor chose specifically to handle this chaotic case. A specialist whose sole job for an entire week was to meticulously analyze the referee report second by second, cross-referencing every single camera angle and every broadcast feed, every slow-motion replay, and every single high-resolution photo taken by the accredited pitchside press to piece together with absolute precision exactly who struck whom, and at what precise moment it occurred. And that extreme level of scrutiny is the exact reason why, a week after the match ended, the fallout is far from over. Actually, it has only just begun. Formal, numbered, and highly specific charges have now arrived, fully backed by hard evidence already delivered directly to the disciplinary committee. Yet, nobody is talking about the most critical piece of this entire puzzle. This is not just some generic disciplinary file for getting caught up in a massive post-match brawl. FIFA actually decided to weigh the specific responsibility of every single person involved, using a completely different standard for each. Name by name, action by action, camera angle by camera angle. Let us break down the heaviest case of them all. Leandro Paredes, the midfielder with a deep history at Boca Juniors, had a career that, until this incident, kept him completely far away from serious disciplinary headlines. Then suddenly, in a matter of just a few minutes, he went from being a standard piece in his national team's tactical system to becoming the absolute poster boy of this entire scandal. What truly sets him apart is not just the sheer gravity of what he did, but the highly specific way FIFA chose to completely break down his individual responsibility. 3 separate numbered charges, each one corresponding directly to a completely different act of physical violence. One charge is linked to a strike hitting an opponent directly in the neck area, while another is tied to the aggressive shove that sent him flying to the ground right in front of the Sans. And this is precisely where the brutal math absolutely destroys Paredes. Under the specific article of the FIFA disciplinary code that covers physical assaults, every single one of those individual charges carries an automatic minimum suspension of 3 matches. 3 charges, 3 matches each. By calculating just these absolute minimum baseline points, Paredes is already looking directly at a massive 9 games ban from representing his national team. 9 games. In international soccer, that is no simple penalty. That means being completely forced out of an entire World Cup qualifying cycle. The second name on this list is Noel Molina, and his case is particularly devastating because it actually combines 2 distinct categories of the rulebook that almost never show up together for a single player at the same time. Not one assault charge, but 2 simultaneous assault charges connected to the very same opponent. One is for the blow that hit him directly in the stomach while he was running to celebrate the championship. The other is for the violent physical clash that broke out just seconds later. And on top of that, he faces a third completely separate charge for unsportsmanlike conduct, a penalty category that does not even require physical violence, but instead punishes behavior that actively ruins the true spirit of fair play. That is 3 distinct charges in total. It is the exact same number of offenses as Paredes, though split across 2 very different legal categories. And if we only look at the absolute baseline suspension for the 2 assault charges, Molina is already looking at a minimum of 6 games on the sidelines, before we even begin to calculate what he gets for the unsportsmanlike conduct. 6, before any count. That brings us directly to the case that, from a strictly institutional viewpoint, is by far the most shocking of them all. Roberto Ayala. Now keep in mind, we are absolutely not talking about an active player on the pitch here. We are actually talking about the prominent assistant manager of the Argentine national team's coaching staff. The senior leader on the bench, the very person who is supposed to represent calm, control, and authority during moments of extreme high-stakes pressure. That very man was formally hit with an assault charge for throwing a punch at an opposing player right in the middle of. Wait a second. Because what you are about to hear completely changes the entire scope of this official file. Amidst the utter chaos of a World Cup final, a punch was thrown by the very man whose actual job was to manage the situation calmly from the sidelines. And even though, on paper, a single charge might look like the absolute lightest file among all the ones we are reviewing right now, There is a massive hidden detail that absolutely nobody is sharing about Ayala's case. Because the massive institutional damage of this disciplinary file cannot be measured by a simple count of matches suspended. It is measured by something completely and utterly different. It is one thing for young, emotional players, pumped full of high-running adrenaline and raw frustration after losing a World Cup final, to momentarily lose complete control of their emotions. You can understand that. You cannot justify it, but you can understand it. But it is a completely different scenario when a staff member, whose absolute sole responsibility is to keep heads cool when everything boils over, ends up being formally charged with physically assaulting an opposing player by punching them with his very own fist. And it is precisely because of that heavy symbolic dimension that several specialized media outlets suggest Ayala could face, on top of any standard ban, a flat-out ban from entering the team dugout, or even a total stadium restriction preventing him from attending any games for a set number of matches. Not a basic sports ban, but a total institutional lockout. Those are very different things. But this disciplinary file does not stop there. The official list of accused individuals grows to include Thiago Almada, formally charged with unsportsmanlike behavior. This is a significantly less severe charge than direct physical assault, carrying a minimum penalty of just 1 game, but it remains a formal stain recorded on his disciplinary record regardless. And here is the exact detail that usually catches people off guard if they only follow the casual headlines. Over on the Spanish side, Gabi himself has also been formally charged. Unsporting conduct. It is the exact same category, bringing the exact same minimum ban of just 1 match. That completely shatters the popular narrative that this investigation is some one-sided punishment targeted solely at Argentina. The disciplinary committee is making it very clear that Gabi's involvement in the brawl did not go unnoticed either. And that adds a massive layer of complexity to this whole massive scandal, because even the player who ended up slammed onto the cold turf right before the world's cameras still received a formal notification. Absolutely nobody walked away clean here. Nobody. But FIFA decided to go even further by opening up completely separate disciplinary proceedings against the Argentine Football Association itself as an institution. These cases are entirely independent of the individual charges linked to offensive chants and gestures deemed highly discriminatory by certain groups of local supporters, alongside dangerous objects thrown from the stands throughout the entire tournament. On top of all that, we have to add a separate case that was already brewing back during the semi-finals against England. Several Argentine players were photographed holding up a political banner with a strong slogan claiming sovereignty over the disputed Malvinas Islands. This is an issue that goes far beyond pure sports. It injects a heavy geopolitical dimension into this case that FIFA simply cannot afford to ignore. When you add everything up, 5 individuals facing direct personal charges, plus the multiple ongoing cases opened against the association as a whole, it becomes clear we are looking at one of the most massive disciplinary cases that FIFA has ever opened regarding a single nation's run in a World Cup. But there is still one crucial question that nobody has answered clearly yet. What happens now? According to FIFA's very own official procedural rules, both the Argentine and the Spanish Football Federations will have the formal opportunity to present evidence and arguments to the disciplinary committee before any final sanction is officially confirmed. But to truly grasp just how seriously FIFA might take a massive case like this, we should look back at what they have actually done before. Because we are not dealing with a committee that just hands out symbolic warnings and moves on. A Uruguayan striker got a 4-month ban for biting an opponent in a World Cup. A Spanish official received a full 3-year suspension for an unconsented kiss during their Women's World Cup title celebration. 3 whole years, not 3 matches, 3 years. When FIFA decides to act with absolute firmness, they have the absolute power to hand down punishments that define entire careers, and that is exactly what is at stake right now. The huge question hanging over this entire process is whether FIFA, facing such a wide and diverse range of responsible parties, with 5 individuals charged directly, plus multiple extra institutional proceedings against the Football Association, will use this opportunity to build an exemplary case that sends a very powerful message to the entire footballing world. Or if, on the contrary, spreading the blame among so many different people will end up diluting the real impact of each individual punishment. Because focusing all of your disciplinary fury on one single culprit is not the same as dividing it among five different figures, each with their own level of guilt, their own expensive lawyer, their own unique defense, and their own narrative of what happened. That constant tension between making a collective example and diluting individual blame is probably the main factor that will decide how this case wraps up. But there is still one crucial dimension to this case that almost nobody is actually talking about, and that is the purely financial side of it. Because beyond the match bans hanging over players and coaching staff, FIFA's disciplinary code also allows for very substantial financial fines directly targeting the Football Association as an institution. And in the most severe repeat offender cases, they can take even harsher actions, like forcing a team to play their official matches behind completely closed doors. Empty stands, no fans allowed, and considering the Argentine Football Association already faces separate charges for the behavior of their supporters, for objects thrown from the stands, on top of the individual charges against their star players and coaching staff, it would not be shocking at all to see a massive financial penalty added to this growing list of punishments sooner or later. So, here we are, staring down the first formal charges of an investigation that spent weeks brewing behind a wall of rumors, leaks, and intense anticipation. And the massive question still hanging in the air, the one that will likely define how this whole drama goes down in world football history, is whether these minimum sanctions currently on the table are actually enough to deliver true justice for what millions of fans around the world watched live on the night of that wild final, or if FIFA still needs to push considerably further with this, especially since their official investigation is still very much open. Several of these disciplinary proceedings have not even reached their final stages yet, and we are highly likely to see another major name added to this official case file over the coming weeks. A name that has not appeared in a single headline yet, weeks before we get official confirmation on additional punishments that remain completely unknown today. And that is precisely what makes this entire disciplinary file so vastly different from anything we have ever seen in World Cup history. Usually, these dramatic stories wrap up quickly with a brief statement, a small fine, a one-match ban, and everyone moves on. But this has not ended. This is fully active, and with every passing week, fresh evidence emerges, ongoing proceedings push forward, and as one stage finally wraps up, another immediately begins. Leandro Paredes is staring down a massive 9-match ban. 9 Noel Molina faces 6. Roberto Ayala faces a potential institutional suspension extending far beyond the pitch, while Thiago Almada and Gabi now have formal charges written on their records. And the Argentine Football Association itself, as an institution, is battling separate legal proceedings that might result in massive multi-million-dollar fines or matches played in completely empty stadiums. All this chaos triggered by the wild minutes immediately following the final whistle of a World Cup final, stemming from a brief sequence of events that lasted, in total, maybe 2 or 3 minutes right in front of the global television cameras. Those fleeting moments are now turning into one of the most massive disciplinary case files that FIFA has ever launched against a single national squad in the entire modern history of the World Cup. The real question I am asking myself, and the one you should probably be asking too, is not how many matches Leandro Paredes is going to miss. No, the actual question we must face is what kind of message this sends. Will FIFA finally decide to use this incredibly high-profile case to draw a hard, permanent line regarding acceptable behavior during the most watched single sporting moment on the entire planet, or will this entire scandal simply fade away in a few months, reduced to nothing more than a minor footnote in the history of a final remembered for entirely different reasons? Absolutely nobody has the answer to that yet. But what we do know for sure is that the disciplinary committee currently has an unprecedented mountain of evidence sitting on its desk. The monumental decisions they hand down in the coming weeks will shape far more than just the legacy of this historic final, but the absolute credibility of the governing body itself too. Manage the fallout when the sport completely boils over right at the peak of its global exposure. We will follow every single development in this unfolding drama, because there is still a massive amount left to be resolved. Once those next rulings land, we will break down every single detail for you, going name by name and charge by charge, just like we did today. If you made it all the way to this point, then this story definitely gripped you. That means we are on the exact same page. So go ahead and hit that like button. It helps out immensely and takes only a second. If you have not subscribed yet, do it now because we are not slowing down. There is always a new story to tell and fresh updates breaking every single day. Thanks for being here, and I will see you next time. Take care.